Yo, what is up? Welcome in on another episode of Between the Hedges. It is Friday night, and you know what that means. We're going live at 10 p.m., right, guys? 9 p.m. Central.
That's right. You can set your clock to it.
So,
No comment.
how's everyone doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to
Can't
be back
complain.
with you guys tonight.
We didn't miss you.
Dang, running people off already. All right, I guess it's time for me to start talking. First, I wanted to give a shout out to our biggest fan out there, Pappy, old Papster. He's he's I know he's going to be watching this. If he's not now, he will be later. He calls me after every episode and tells me how awesome these are. So y'all make him right and gas it up, like it, share it. So welcome in.
Golf clap for Pappy.
Golf
Golf clap.
clap. Yeah. So as y'all can see here, we're going to go over Georgia's 2024 schedule and some more transfer portal news. Um, so without further ado, let's get into the schedule. And as you can see here on the screen, we open up August 31st in Atlanta. Is that the Chick-fil-A kickoff game?
Yeah, I believe that's
Yes.
Chick-fil-A kickoff game.
And that's against the Clemson Tigers, the once mighty Clemson Tigers. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it'll be a good game. I mean, Clemson turned things around towards the end of the season. They they were not going in a good direction at all during the year towards the beginning, but they turned it around, started playing better. And it'll be a tough game. It always is when Georgia and Clemson match up. I mean, that's an old school rivalry right there. And when you have a rivalry game, you know, strange things can happen. Just ask Auburn and Alabama.
Yeah, we're not even going to get into that because you know,
Or
Alabama's
Georgia
supposed
and Florida, the list goes on.
yeah. I think, this matchup definitely starts the season better than, Georgia started this season, obviously, with everybody complaining about the first four games of our schedule. Although, as we all know, and just to remind everyone out there, Oklahoma got taken off the schedule,
By
right?
the SEC.
Right. The
It,
SEC took them off because they're joining the SEC. As you can see down here, Texas is on the schedule next year, and we'll get into that a little bit. But
it's just
it's
real quick, just to mention that since you talked about Oklahoma being removed, in case some people don't understand why that is, it was a home and home series. The contract was for 2 games. The one that we would have played this season was the first game in the 2 game series. The return game that was going to be played in Oklahoma. The return game wasn't until several years down the road. And by that time, they would have already been in the SEC. So it would have been an SEC game. And so they had to take it off for scheduling purposes to make it right. So that's the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, good point there. Thank you for adding that. Matthew, I think you were acting like you had something to say.
Yeah. I don't think that game's going to be even close. Clemson is on the downhill, and Dabo is going to get out of there more than likely.
Woo,
Think
coming with the
so.
hot take right off the bat.
They've been tanking a little bit. not their fault, but they're just losing their mojo now. They're not doing well. It's Florida State's conference now.
Well, I mean, you could definitely say they've taken a step back from when they won their two national titles, but they're not a slouch team. It's not like you're playing, you know, Boston College.
Georgia Tech could be better than them.
Mm, hard pass on that one.
I don't know. I mean, did you see? I think Clemson pretty much boat raced Georgia Tech when they played this season. If I'm remembering correctly. I don't even think it was close. I guess one of us could look it up, but I don't think that was a close match, close game.
No, it wasn't,
Okay.
So
but it
to
could happen.
say, yeah, I mean, yeah, anything can happen. I mean, we've seen that. We've seen teams come out of nowhere. Um, but Clemson still recruiting at a high level. Now they're not that what Dabo's getting crushed on right now is the portal. He's not adapting to that. He's wanting to still do things the old school way, which I think still has some value. Um, he's still going to have a sound program. He's going to have a, you know,
Talented team.
yeah, there's still going to be talent there. It's just not going to be top heavy with, seniors that transfer in um, as grad transfers essentially. So
And I
I
mean,
think
let's not forget the last time we played them to open a season. It wasn't exactly a barn burner, lighting up the scoreboard type game. If I
uh,
remember right, it was like 10-3.
10
And
to 3,
the difference in that game was a pick six.
very ugly, very slow, very old school type game. And, you know, probably be, it probably won't be quite like that because I think both offenses will be better than that year to start the season. But definitely could be one of those close, slug it out matchups. Definitely excited about opening in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz
Yeah,
and
it's definitely
it,
good to have a marquee matchup to start off the season, I do believe. It gets everybody engaged, including the fans, but players, everybody engaged, knowing that you got to come out swinging from the get-go, and otherwise you might end up being the one getting embarrassed on national TV.
Yep.
yeah. Well, unless somebody wants to add something else about Clemson, we can move on.
Good.
I'm good. I'm good with skipping over Tennessee Tech as well. I don't think there's much to say about that one other than Georgia is gonna open, in Athens. That'll be the first home game, and it'll be a game to get as many guys playing time as possible. That's all we'll say about that. And then we open SEC play on the road in Kentucky, our
Looking forward to that game.
facing our former backup quarterback, Brock Vandagriff, and his
Dub.
new look team.
And playing Kentucky in Kentucky is never a fun matchup. I mean, just a tough, tough physical team. They play hard nosed. You know, they don't back down. And the added caveat of playing um, against them with Brock being their quarterback, that's just, you know, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting because I know we've all, over the last couple of years, have really, really wanted to see Brock get a lot of playing time. It would or get more playing time than what he was getting here. So we're going to get to see it. It's just going to be for the other team instead of Georgia.
Well, and I like that we're kind of getting to our the meat of our schedule just 3 weeks in. I mean, and two of the first three matchups are, good matchups. It's a stark contrast to the way 2023 started and that schedule was laid out. Um, and I do like the early bye week as well, because then, 4 weeks in, you get a week off after you go up to Lexington and we, have a hard fought battle there. Then we get ready for
A small
going
game, just a
just
tiny game.
just this tiny little rematch, with the team that just knocked Georgia from having an opportunity to go for a three-peat. So just a tiny matchup, and as you can already see, they've already slotted us in for prime time on ABC.
Of
So
course, why wouldn't they?
yeah, why
It's
don't why don't you
Alabama
why don't you expound on that, Matthew? Why would they slot us at that ABC primetime slot this early out?
because it's the rematch of the SEC championship game. Um, and it's also a very, very intense rivalry between Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. Um, because Kirby hasn't beaten him in the regular season slash championship era.
The SEC
But he's
championship?
yeah, the SEC championship, sorry.
Yeah. I
But
mean, he got
he's
one when it
beaten him.
counted.
Yeah, he got one where it meant more. But I think this game um it's gonna be a close one for sure. But it's interesting and kind of a gimme that they already put it as a primetime game
What's
because of
interesting
these
to me
two.
talking about all of these games, though, is just how much everything is so up in the air right now when you try to figure out how these games are going to go. Because right now we're in the middle of, we got early signing day next Wednesday, the 20th. We got the portal open. We got players coming, going, jumping teams from team to team all over the country. Um, and then we'll have the normal signing day in February to finish up this recruiting class. And then we'll have another portal to go through after the spring. So trying to figure out what your team's going to look like and who you're actually going to be cheering for and who you're not going to be cheering for anymore is a whole new, ball game for us fans to get used to in, the way things are run these days. Yeah. So that's when I sit here and look at this, I think, yeah, I mean, it'll be a great game, but a lot is yet to be determined on all of these teams as far as who's still there, who's gone, all that stuff to determine how talented and how deep, you know, each team will be. So just a side note to all this.
Yeah, that's a good point. We will get into a little bit more of how the teams can look a lot different in a little bit, but I've got this one circled obviously not just because of the recent history, but you know, can Georgia avenge a loss and go to Tuscaloosa and make a statement that we're here to stay. This isn't a fluke. We're not going to fall off and not be a real contender like Clemson has looked, the past couple of years. Like they're just no longer a real contender. I mean, they're going to be like we said, a solid team. They're going to be, well coached. They're going to be recruiting well, but they're not one of the national players right now, one of the premier programs, even at this point, because Georgia's gone on this run, and now it looks like Alabama is still a factor. Texas is up and coming, and you've got, Washington, who's quietly been building, Oregon, who's building. Um, so we've got this one's going to be a really, really good September matchup. And can't wait for it. I can tell you this, we mentioned, who we're going to be rooting for. I can guarantee you, though, I know you were talking about players, but I won't be rooting for Alabama in this game. Can guarantee you that. Um, so, as everybody out there probably already knew. But then we go back home and we invite Auburn to town, which, I'm wondering how different Auburn looks because they desperately need a quarterback. And I think Hugh Freeze isn't going to just stand by while he gets the pedestrian quarterback play that he's gotten this season. So watch out for Auburn in transfer portal, landing you know, one of the top tier quarterbacks.
Hey, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Brad Newsom joining us on the live. He hits us up in the chat and says, "Go Dogs."
Go Dogs. Appreciate you watching, man. Thanks for tuning in.
Like
Um,
and subscribe.
well, see, that's the other thing. We got to give him a reason to, right? So let me hear your best analysis for why um, Auburn will be an improved team next year and somebody that Georgia, can't sleep on bring with them coming to Athens next season.
Well, all you got to do is think back to how we played them this year, and that game was well in doubt until the fourth quarter. In fact, we were losing the majority of that game. And, another year under his belt to get his system installed and get his players coming in. I mean, nowadays with the portal and all that stuff, I mean, you can pick and choose the right players that you want on the team and turn over the roster a lot more quickly than in years past, where you were just maybe a handful of transfers, one or two or three, and then the vast majority you're just bringing in high school seniors, freshmen to come in and change the roster, and it took 2 or 3 years to turn it over. Not the case anymore. Not the case at all. I mean, he can go out and pick and choose the players that he wants, that he feels comfortable, that he likes, and go to war with them. And so anytime you play Auburn, it's a tough game. Georgia Auburn's deep South's oldest rivalry, and they no love lost between the two teams, between the players or anybody, and it's always a big time game when they get together.
100% agree. One of my
Yeah.
favorite Auburn or Georgia games to go to actually was Georgia Auburn in 2019. So that atmosphere was it's just different.
And
Every time.
and and to add to that, I've been to two Georgia Auburn games in Auburn. Those are two of the best games I've ever been to. I mean, the atmosphere there was just crazy. And I can see why teams have trouble going there and winning, especially. I mean, Auburn probably gave Georgia and Alabama both the toughest game they had each this whole
Mhm.
season, each of us. I mean, Auburn played both of those teams tough, and you could argue they should have won both of them.
Yeah. Imagine that. Matthew, you acted like you had something to add to that.
I was just going to piggyback off of y'all. With Auburn, um, it could potentially, I mean, yeah, they played a really good game against us and a really good game against Alabama, but if they don't, um, haven't really heard much of them in the transfer portal per se. So if they don't start acting now, are they really going to be that team to worry about? I mean, they lost to New Mexico State and paid them $1.8 million to lose.
Yeah, that's probably the SEC's biggest blunder of the season. So, which I guess that's a good point. Which Auburn team are we gonna get? We don't know. Like Dad says, a lot of this is up in the air because a lot is to be determined. Um, and so moving on to the next week, we welcome Mississippi State to town. Um, you know, Mississippi State's definitely in a rebuild. Um, Losing the late Mike Leach, the way that that happened, it was tragic, and it was a shock to the system. So you can't fault, Mississippi State or those players for, it being tough times there right now. But again, they're gonna be feisty as well. I mean, everybody from that old West, and I say old West because, the SEC is going divisionless next season, and expanding the schedule. So
Which I think is
um,
a really good thing.
I agree, and let's talk about that because you're going to get not only are you getting Oklahoma and Texas, and Oklahoma and Texas are going to be playing everybody, right? Um, you also just by adding another SEC game, you look up and down this schedule, there's really, I mean, yeah, you get a two buys now, and then you get a couple of cupcakes, but then the rest of the, I mean, Georgia goes undefeated with this schedule. There's no argument. And I know we're going to 12 teams, but there's no argument who the best team in the country is, right? Same thing with Alabama. If Alabama runs the table, goes undefeated, there's no argument. Texas, Oklahoma, if they do that, there's no argument. Who's the best team in the country? So it really benefits the SEC to move to this schedule, and have a more, a tougher schedule, what makes for a better resume. So
Well,
And I mean, just to add to that, this makes everybody's schedule tough. Um, some don't have as tough as others. I know for one, Old Miss will have a tough schedule. We will have a tough UGA will have a tough schedule. And even Florida is going to have like the worst time. They have a lot of top 15 Power 5 team like top 15 SEC teams in their like last 5 games of the year or of the season, and it's going to be insane for them.
yeah, the schedule all around is you add Texas and Oklahoma into the mix, it definitely gets tough on the rotations and stuff. And you've never had an easy SEC schedule, though, in my estimation. It's still an 8 game SEC schedule. Um, but you got two quality teams to add into the mix. Uh, the rotation there. Um, but looking at the schedule, I mean, listen to this run of games that Georgia will have to play next year at Alabama, Auburn, then Mississippi State, which we're saying they're a little bit down this year, adding their new coach and stuff. But then you go to Texas. We got the game in Jacksonville with Florida. Then we're at Ole Miss and Tennessee. That is a gauntlet, flat
Yeah,
out. I mean, there's no sleepwalking through any of those games. None. And I mean, you pull up anybody's schedule in the SEC for next year, and you can pick a stretch of at least 4 or 5 games in a row that everybody has that matchup. It has that type of window of their schedule that's just brutal. You know, um, so that's it's gonna make for some good TV. I know that.
for sure.
And that's absolutely why the SEC chose to do this,
Yep.
that to add Texas and Oklahoma more revenue, more views, right? Um, and I also think I'm glad you pointed out that we're still with an eight games SEC schedule. I think this just evolves into a 9 game conference schedule.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I think eventually that's the plan down the road to go to 9 games. Um, and what's interesting next season too is the doing away with the divisions. You don't have an East winner playing a West champion. It's just the top 2 teams. Whoever survives the gauntlet the best, top two, all right, go for round 9 here in the SEC championship. And what's interesting to add to that as well with the new college football playoff format being 12 teams, I think you're pretty much assured if you make the SEC championship game, you're going to make the playoff. There's none of this losing that game and getting knocked out of the top 4 when you're the number 1 ranked team in the nation for the entire season.
right. Yeah, it alleviates what exactly happened to Florida State, to Georgia, and really Ohio State in a way. Ohio State lost 1 game as well, and they're out. They have
Mhm.
no shot.
All 3 of those
They
teams would be in the new format. I don't have a
and,
doubt in my mind all 3 of those teams would be in the 12 team playoff right now if it were happening this year.
and they're all hosting home playoff games, and probably going to
Winning them.
destroy the teams that they face.
I mean, maybe not Florida State with their quarterback injured, but if he hadn't got injured, yes, you're right. And if he hadn't got injured, they probably make it. So who knows?
No, they
Um,
still wouldn't have.
there's no way to really tell that. This year was the most unique
Hmm.
um, of the
Stupid.
4 team playoff,
Well, I
and
mean, it's the first time we had 6 to 8 teams that were legitimately qualified to make the 4 team playoff.
yeah,
Every other year, we're scrapping, trying to, will somebody in to be that fourth place team, you know, the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. This year, there were at least 6 teams that should have made it. You could make an argument for up to like 8 teams that could have made it. So, and been represent themselves well in the games. So,
I agree. Just kind of getting back to the schedule. I know that we've had a good conversation so far. I did want to point out too, um, this at Texas game for Georgia. It's going to be huge, not only because it's before Florida. I know we get a bye in between, thank God. Um, because if we didn't, like you said, you went on the rundown of that 5, 6 game stretch. It's brutal. And at Ole Miss too. It's just like our toughest games are going to be on the road, just like
All
our
of
tough.
our tough games next year are on the road. Every single one of them are road games. So we're going to have to be road warriors next year to be one of the top teams in the country next year.
And here's the other thing, no shame in finishing this schedule 11-1.
Or
No
10 and
shame.
2.
Yeah, no
10 and
shame in
10 and
that.
2, you're with this schedule, you're a good team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And you probably make the playoff.
yeah, absolutely. 10-2 might be the SEC runner-up. We may not have an undefeated SEC team.
And what's interesting, you brought
I
up the
don't think we
Texas
will.
game. Well, you brought up the Texas game.
Yeah.
This is their first year in the SEC, and we go to Texas to play them.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
We
going
still
to
haven't
be a
gone to
party.
we still haven't gone to Texas A&M to play them
Yeah.
at their place. They've been in the conference for a dozen years or so now, something like
Yeah.
that.
They
And
all
we
deserve
still
our
so
presence.
we're gonna play at Texas before we ever play at Texas A&M. That's kind of quirky if you ask me.
I'm okay with that.
It's just a quirk.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to play
It was a
against Jimbo
scheduling.
Fisher?
I
Well,
think that point went flying straight over your head.
it's a little bit of a schedule blunder is what you're trying to say because I think we didn't waste any time going to Missouri when they
Well,
joined.
because they were in the East, we were going to play at Missouri within the first two seasons that they were in the conference because they got put in the East. I'm just saying it was a scheduling quirk since Texas A&M has been in the conference. We've played them at home, but we've never gone to Texas A&M. And now the first year Texas is in the conference, we're going there to play them. It's just funny, a funny little factoid. That's all I
Yeah.
was saying.
Yeah. And I mean, that would just mean like if we were to play Texas A&M this year, that means we would have played both Mississippi teams and both Texas teams in the same year, which would have been crazy.
Yeah. And we're probably looking at that, in the near future. So, um, that with all that being said, that's why I like that, change is coming because it's just going to make the product on the field better.
Which would have
Um,
been crazy.
we've had
Yep.
a,
And we're probably looking at that,
I'm
in the near.
getting feedback.
Yep.
All right. Um, we're probably looking at, just a much, much better SEC schedule moving forward and Big Ten as well because they are expanding and going divisionless also, I believe. So, um,
Go Oregon.
I I think this is the first time in what 3 or 4 years that we go to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So,
I think the last time we were there was Kirby's first year in 2016.
okay, so it's been several years,
Yeah, I
Was
think
it
that's the last
2016?
time. It was Kirby's first year because they absolutely killed us in that game.
right?
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so that was my point. The last time we were there, it was not friendly to us. Now Kirby just took over the program. He, had to kind of get everything established the way that he wanted it to. That was really his first big test. Um, so you can't expect, Georgia to pass that test the first time. But so I'd be interested to see. I'll circle that one as well, just because, we returned there, and I know Kirby's going to have that on his mind that last time he was there, it was ugly. And he wants to get out of town with a win because who wants to listen to Lane Kiffin, talk smack about, Ole Miss winning that game? Not me. So, um, and then again, if we can finish up this end of the schedule here, I think we can roll on into the SEC championship next year. Like I said, I think 10-2 gets you into the SEC championship as that second team next year. So, and notice here, just a little another fact, ABC, ESPN and ABC are now going to be the flagship station for the SEC. It's no longer CBS. So
RIP.
for all of you who loved and or hated, the CBS crew, that SEC championship game was the last rendition of that crew broadcasting that game. So uh, let me stop sharing here, and we are going to transition now to our transfer portal update. And does anybody have a factoid that they would like to share about the transfer portal as far as it concerns, UGA?
I will like to mention with Dylan Rayola. It's still up in the air and it's a little concerning. And also along with not hearing anything about Carson Beck. Um, those two are uh very concerning for me. Um, I feel like Carson Beck needs to stay another year. I don't want him to pull an Anthony Richardson and go into the NFL with only 12 games played, 9 games played. That's not what you want. You want to have experience, you want to have the knowledge, and you want to have the accountability. Um, so I really, really, really hope Carson Beck um stays, because if not, we have been interested in the backup quarterback for Texas, Murphy.
Yeah, and he, if Beck does leave, and with Brock Vandagriff committing to Kentucky, like we've already mentioned before, uh, that leaves kind of a thin quarterback room. I know we're supposed to sign another quarterback, but again, true freshman, so you kind of want somebody with some experience. So I think Malik Murphy would be a good target if Beck leaves. My big um, announcement and takeaway from the portal news, we had um, offensive lineman Austin Blasky commit to North Carolina, and he joins, like I said, Brock Vandagriff committing to Kentucky, Jonathan Jefferson to SMU, and um, then we have Jackson Meeks, the wide receiver, committing to Syracuse following Georgia's former DB coach up there. Um, and then it looks like we have added Marvin Jones Jr. to the portal. He's thrown his name in, AJ Harris, and Jamon Dumas Johnson. That was, I'll be honest, that was a shock to me. I don't know about you guys, but this was a starter and a big time contributor on defense until he got hurt, and now he's weighing his options. I'm not totally sure where this one came from, and just it really shocked me. So
Yeah, I would agree. His name going into the portal is a little bit of a surprise until you dig deeper into who's behind him. And we brought in a star-studded freshman group of linebackers this past season, and um, we're bringing in just as good a class of linebackers in this 2024 class to come behind that. Um, CJ Allen was taking some of his snaps even before he got hurt. And then, of course, he got the injury and CJ took over as the starter there. The other guys on, like I mentioned, the freshman guy, linebackers, They were playing a lot. And I think this is a case where he might have seen the writing on the wall that the talent was there in those guys, and he could see them getting more and more playing time. And maybe it was something where he was told in meetings with the coaches and stuff that he's not necessarily guaranteed to be the starter anymore if he stayed. So, I mean, we're not privy to those conversations. We just conjecture about what we think might have been said or whatever. Um, so if that were the case, what's best for him? Go find yourself another place that you can play and be the starter, because his next step is the NFL. I believe he'll make an NFL team. Um, so if you're willing to let him walk out the door, that should tell you something about who's coming up behind him if he's, a possible NFL player. I mean, yeah, like you said, I agree totally that it was a little bit shocking to see that come out today. Um, and him actually didn't put his name in the portal. And let's not forget too, just because you put your name in the portal doesn't mean that you're gone. It does
Right.
not mean that you are for sure out the door going to another team. We had a Marius Mims last season put his name in the portal, and he took a couple of visits and he decided, you know what, I like it better at Georgia. I'm going to stay. And they agreed to let him come back. Now, granted, that's got to be the case. If somebody changes their mind and wants to come back, Kirby's got to say, "Yeah, come on, we want you." Um, but yeah, that was definitely shocking. And one other thing, just to circle back just a second, Brad tuning in today, he put in another comment in the chat saying Florida's last 7 games of this season are insane. And I was just going to say, I pulled it up and looked at it. I mean, you got they're playing at Tennessee, then they got Kentucky at home, then they've got the Georgia game in Jacksonville, then they go to Texas. LSU comes to Florida to play. They got LSU at home. Then they got Ole Miss at home, at Florida. Then they finish at Florida State. That
Dago.
that may be an 0-7 stretch for them next year.
Yeah. I was
I
about to
mean,
say,
pick
Ouch.
out the win, pick out the win in that. You got at Tennessee, or I would say they are not going to be favored in that game. Kentucky going down to Florida, they may be favored. Florida may
I
be
don't.
favored, but Florida, I mean, lost to Kentucky up in Kentucky this year. Then you got Florida, Georgia, which we've had the better end of that rivalry game here lately. So I don't see any reason for that to change. Then they go to Texas, college football playoff top 4 team this year. Then they got LSU coming to town. Like, they won't have Jaden Daniels next year, but still, LSU and Florida games are always must see TV. Then you got Ole Miss, a top 10 team coming to town. And then at Florida State, oh, by the way, just an undefeated ACC champion coming back to going to their place to play. You talking about brutal schedule? Can you say new ball coach for 2025?
I was about to say, what's y'all's over under on games that Billy Napier lasts? I don't think he lasts through the season. I think maybe by the Georgia game, they have a new coach.
By the Tennessee game.
I don't know if
Fair.
it'll be by Tennessee.
If not after.
And here's the other thing. I mean, the first half of their schedule is not slouchy. I mean, they got Miami they got to play. That's a home game for Florida. Then they got Samford. Okay, maybe they'll actually beat Samford, but I'm not gonna put money on it.
Hell.
Then they get Texas A&M coming to Florida. after that. Then they go to Mississippi State, which they could probably win. But then Central Florida comes to, uh, you know,
Old Gus Gus.
it's just, I
Hey
mean,
man,
they may win 1 or 2 games next year. That's
That's what
it.
I'm s-
2-11 or 2-10.
10.
10.
Sorry, I can't count.
Two to 4 games next year is probably what they're winning.
That's
Four
what
games would be a good year for them to win. I can't believe I'm saying that
Bye
about
bye.
Florida, but that's insane. So good point there, Brad, that you shared with us. I'm sorry I got us off track. We'll go back to the portal news, but I just had to bring that up. That's too good to leave off.
Well, yeah, Florida's probably got the toughest. I mean, if you ESPN's already put out, their FPI, and all this and their predictions for next season and the toughest schedule based off of this year's um, you know, results, but you can't base everything year to year off the previous year, but yeah, that's a brutal stretch. I really honestly don't think that Billy Napier makes it through the season. And he definitely isn't returning for 2025 with that
A
schedule.
little tiny bit makes me feel sorry for the Gators next year. Nah, never mind. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Suck it, Gators.
I second that. You know,
Suck my ass.
I mean,
Moving right along.
so, I didn't really have a whole lot else to add to the transfer portal other than this. Matthew, you said the Rayola thing scares you. I don't like that either because you had a five-star quarterback, commit and now he's on the fence and it makes you wonder, you know, was he 100% in when he said I commit? He's committed to other teams before, and I know it's kind of like, dating. You're always gonna say, okay, you find a cute girl that, oh yeah, I'm with her, we're 100%, and then an even cuter girl comes along, and you're like, oh no, now it's her. So um, I just don't. The only thing is that analogy doesn't work between Georgia and Nebraska. The only difference is, his
Cold weather.
his dad playing there. Cold weather would be a negative. I don't think that's why you would. I think you'd want to stay in the South, but his dad playing there, his uncle coaching there. Nebraska's full of money. I think all of this plays into that. And, maybe he's all but gone, but hopefully not, especially if Beck doesn't return.
Well, there is
Especially.
I will say the verbal commitments these days mean less and less and less because all it does is just give uh, everybody else the knowledge of knowing who is in the leader in the clubhouse for that player right now. Um, nothing's official until they sign their letter of intent on signing day. Um, and the way things run these days, that's not even that big a deal anymore either because they can turn right around and leave in the portal, their first spring practice or their whatever. So, I mean, it's topsy turvy. I mean, the coaches have to constantly recruit the players and then re-recruit them, and it's just a whole new ball game when it comes to assembling your talent and your roster and putting the pieces together to hopefully have a successful team. But I will say too, don't sleep on the second quarterback in this class. He was also, what is the competition that high school quarterbacks go to? The Elite 11? Is that what it's
Yeah.
called? Um, he was also a member of that competition. Ryan Puglisi.
Yeah, and we got
He he is going to be a good one. I have a feeling he's flown under the radar because we had the number one overall player in the whole class, Dylan Raiola committed as a quarterback as well. So we got his commit, and he was committed, and he's been committed over a year, and he stuck to it, and he signed, and he's actually in Athens today, as of today, enrolling early, taking part in bowl practices, and getting a head start on things for the spring semester coming up, and you know just putting it, he's just ready to work and put his nose to the grindstone and get better. And don't sleep on him when it comes to, it's not going to be next year, but he's going to be there and he's going to work his tail off to get better. He said plenty of times in interviews he's coming to Georgia and he's sticking with Georgia no matter, even if Dylan Raiola stays committed. He was committed before Dylan. And after Dylan committed, people came in and said, well, are you going to, decommit now? You're going to find another place. And number one quarterback in the nation is going there. No, I'm going to come. Georgia's going to, get me better and get me to the next level. So that's the kind of kid you want on your team, if you're asking me. So he's not afraid to come and compete and try to win the spot. And if nothing else, he'll get better and, you know, um, maybe down the line, if he doesn't see a chance to get to the field, he'll transfer like everybody does these days and go to a team. But he'll go against in practice every day one of the top defenses in the nation, and it will help him get better and progress. Hopefully, we'll get to see him though playing one day.
yeah,
Yeah, I hope so too.
I agree with that. Those are some very good points. And let's start putting some respect on his name. Puglisi, you said?
Ryan Puglisi,
Puglisi. So,
I think is how you say it.
if you fly under the radar, you're willing to stick your head down and work and stay committed to the process, then hey, that is the kind of guy we want. I don't want somebody, everybody got all up in arms about Justin Fields coming and then he transferred out, right? So if Rayola's just going to be that, and Justin was kind of flaky, we don't want that. You want somebody that's going to be committed, and as much as everybody didn't always believe in Stetson, that's what he brought at the quarterback position. He was just going to outwork you. He was going to put his head down, work harder than you, and it didn't matter who was in front of him. He had all those guys in front of him, and eventually he was the guy. And who delivered back-to-back national championships? The mailman.
Stickwavius, baby.
Sequavius. Put some respect on that
I think
name.
that I think that was Matthew's favorite player of all time for UGA.
You know, we don't have enough time to get into that, but if y'all really want to get into that, we can. And it would
We need
be
to stop this live and start another one for that.
I'm down, but we've had a heck of a back and forth on that in the previous couple of years. We all three probably wish we were doing this then because man, we had some good discussions, we'll call it, on that topic right there. So,
No
All right.
comment.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
hey, I think it's only fitting that we end the show with a picture of the mailman. And that's how we go out. But does anybody have any final thoughts that they would like to add tonight? And then we're gonna wrap this thing up.
I think I've said about everything that I need to tonight. Go dogs.
Always. Matthew?
Let's see. Uh, it's the holiday season. Christmas is right around the corner, so everybody that watches or ends up watching this later on, be safe. Safe travels. Um, don't do anything stupid. Um, and also let's just keep our heads up with Rayola. Hopefully he stays committed and wants to put his name out there a lot more active than he would elsewhere.
Well, good stuff. I don't have anything other than this. I will say we are going to be back again on Sunday with more transfer portal news, whatever else hits over the weekend. And then, we do have some bowl games coming up this weekend. Although not very good, we won't really get into those until next week. Next week's really the better bowl games start happening. And then I wanted to announce we will have a live reaction to National Signing Day next Wednesday. I know normally we're not on Wednesdays, but we will be on for that, at least one or two of us, and reacting to those commitments live. So we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Thank y'all as always. Keep watching, keep sharing, liking, subscribing, and yep, what we want them to hit the alerts, all
Hit that
that.
notification button so you don't miss a live.
Yep, absolutely. And as always, go dogs.
Go dogs.
Go dogs. Sick 'em. Oh, 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 oh.